Hello guys, it's Kerry Martell, the RPG Fanatic, and today I want to talk to you about, it's not really a rant, it's not really much of anything. It's more just a reflection. Yesterday I turned 30. My birthday is December 23rd, and I turned 30 yesterday, and I didn't really do anything for my birthday. I pretty much just stayed home, and I worked promoting the Indiegogo project that we're doing from Martell TV right now, and I answered emails, and that's pretty much it. I got a lot of thinking to myself. Final episode of Sword Art Online also aired, and I watched that, and that also gave me time to think, really, which is why I have this title, Sword Art Online. I am a really huge hardcore MMO player. You may not get that from me because I haven't done that many MMOs, but if you've watched any of my reviews about certain MMOs, you should be able to tell that I'm pretty hardcore. I put a lot of thought into it. I've been playing MMOs since I was a teenager, when it was dial-up internet. I had played EverQuest, I had played small things you'd never even heard of, games like Grail Online, for example, and Nexus TK, Nexus the King of the Winds. I also played Ragnarok Online when it first came out. So watching the show Sword Art Online, I was thinking, why do I really love this show? Why do I connect so well with what these characters are going through? And it's because I played a lot of those. So I understand the whole, it seems like a really weird thing when people talk and review the show about how this whole society and infrastructure, gets created inside the game because the players are trapped in there and it becomes their world. But that stuff already happens with MMOs. There's already these fantastic societies really existing and thriving inside of MMOs. Even small little servers. I played on private servers for games before, and even there you see these communities form with their own rules and customs and heroes and villains even. And it's just, that's what I think really appeals to me about the show, is that it's a true representation of what it's like to be in an MMO, save for the whole, getting stuck in the game and then you die deal. But everything else is pretty true. Even the part of fighting GM characters and being able to basically surpass their own designs, the limits of the system, that stuff is also true. I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I had first, I think about maybe a year after I'd gotten out of the military, I had my disabilities. I really wasn't doing much of anything. I was pretty lost in my life and trying to find direction. And it wasn't helped that I had health problems. So I spent a lot of time playing games online. And I ended up starting to play on a private server for Ragnarok Online called Rayro, which was put on by some of the people involved with 8-Bit Theater. He played on the server a bit, Brian, but mostly it was just his friends that were running the server. And I remember early on when I was playing the game, I said, hey, I'll try this out. I wanted to play basically with the creator of 8-Bit Theater. That was the reason. But the GM of the server, one time, he basically challenged all the players to beat him in a PvP. He uses his GM character. So his character had ridiculously high HP and attacks. He could do every spell in the game. A lot of people were trying to fight him and stuff. So I'm playing a Crusader at the time, and I was like, I think I might be able to beat him. And this is what I decided to do. I got a whole stack of condensed white potions. Anybody who plays Ragnarok before, you know what I'm talking about. A whole crap load of white condensed potions. I had so many white potions that I was overloaded, basically. I was overweight. I was in the penalized status where basically I can no longer regenerate my HP, and I can no longer regenerate my SP, my attack power. I can't redo that anymore. So my whole strategy was to basically do potion spamming to outlast the amount of damage that he was doing while I had shield reflection on. And that alone wouldn't have done it. I had to have very high defense. So, I had carded gear. I had my Therafrog shield. I had, I think I had a poo-poo hat on or something. I also was using a bug. At the time, the server instance, there was a bug that very few people had realized. It involved padded armor and armor charm combo, basically. If you wore padded armor and an armor charm, you would get additional defense and additional health if you were a swordman class, which, Crusaders are. There was a bug so that if you wore another armor charm, you got another defense bonus and another health bonus. So basically, the value of this is that padded armor has very low weight compared to all armors in the game. So by wearing that rather than full plate, I could hold a lot more potions than I normally would have been able to, because I had more weight basically to hold the potions. So I had a crap load of potions, and I had high defense against demi-humans. He used every attack buff in the game, and then he came at me. And I basically, it wasn't just do that and that was it. I had to be good enough to do the potion spamming to outlast him. I had to be fast enough. I had to be faster than this guy who had every buff in the game, all the berserks, all the speed bonuses. He was hitting me so fast, the numbers didn't even catch up with the number of hits that he was hitting me with, basically. He killed himself, and I lived. So I was able to defeat a GM character that had all the advantages using a normal character who wasn't even level 99 at the time, because I simply was able to manipulate the rules of the game in my favor so that I could defeat a GM. So I know exactly, what that's like to be able to do that, and people's reactions to that. After that, everybody on the server knew who I was, and the heat was on. I became a very well-known PvPer in the game. I was able to take on entire guilds by myself. And I will admit, as a private server, there were different rules than the normal, at that time, the public, the real Ragnarok Online server. However, Raid Row was a very low-rate server. So the experience rate, I think, was only 4 times as much. The drop rate was only 3 times as much. As far as stats could go, you couldn't go higher than level 130, and the amount of points that you had for stuff, where you just got slightly more. It really wasn't any different than how Ragnarok Online is now, where you can go beyond level 99. So honestly, I don't think that we were cheating that much, and I wasn't even at max level when I did this, by the way. So it's not really like I could have cheated that much. This is probably something that, if it had happened on the actual Ragnarok Online servers, it would have worked. Unless the bug, of course. If that bug didn't exist, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. But it's the ability to find a strategy that would work to be able to defeat this really incredible opponent. That's something that I always loved about MMOs. And it's something that single-player games, if you only have ever played single-player games and you don't have any comprehension of this stuff, what I'm talking about with playing with other players and in PvP. A lot of people hate PvP. They don't like PvP because they're playing around and then all of a sudden this guy comes and kills me. And that seems to be worse than an NPC killing you. I mean, at least the guy who killed you had to put some real thought into how he was going to kill you. The NPCs are just using a very basic, low-intelligence script and just, doing things by a procedure. The players have to actually think about how to kill you. And that's something I've always loved about PvPs. It's not just about your stats. It's not just about your skills. It's also about what's in here. And it's also about your own physical ability. And it might seem weird for an MMO, but it's true. When you're playing a game, it's played over the internet. This only works with us over the internet, really. When you're playing a game like that, it's not just a matter of memorizing patterns. It's not just that. You have to be able to make predictions about what's going to happen before it's actually happened. What do I mean by that? I played for many, many years a game called Nexus: The Kingdom of the Winds. And this game is very 2D tile-based. So in a way, the combat is a lot like the original Legend of Zelda game. You can only move in straight lines, and you use one attack at a time. You attack in one cell, basically, one single tile you can attack in. So in this game, there's special attacks you can do. But because other players are running around and we're on dial-up, in order to actually hit anybody with it, you have to basically use your attack before that character is actually in that square where the attack goes for. So by playing this sort of game back then, I and other players of the game, this wasn't unusual, this was normal, we were able to develop this ability to predict what would happen in the game and make our moves based upon what we believed was going to happen. You were a very good PvPer if you were very accurate at being able to do that. And then there was additional challenges. Some people would use speed hacks. Yet, even with speed hacks where the character is basically moving way, way faster, you could still compensate for their speed hack and still, with a normal character not using any hacks, you could still kill them. If you were good enough, if you were smart enough, and if you were fast enough. And in a game like this, yeah, you had macros and stuff, but the macros would only let you use one skill. And you only had 10 of them. The average character had 30, 40 different skills. And some characters, they had even more. Mages, for example, we use a lot of different skills. So you had to use different commands. I think you had to hold down Control and then hit Alt and then Z or something to bring up the spell menu. Then you had to hit the different key that was associated with that one. So you had to do all these commands. So basically you have to be moving with your hand almost a full second before the other player would even be wherever it is you are trying to attack. So you had to have the timing perfect. And this may be why a lot of games these days just can't hold my interest long term, is because I have this background playing MMOs against other players who are very intelligent and very good at it. And the NPCs that I'm battling in these games are just stupid. They are so fucking stupid. And this is why I can't get into games like, Star Wars Online and stuff. The enemies are so fucking retarded. It's just ridiculous. It's disappointing, really, that the MMO has not evolved beyond that, to where you have enemies who are actually having real intelligence. I just can't hold my interest. And then some of these PvP games that come out, they just don't hold my interest. Again, with Nexus: The King of the Winds, game most people have never heard of. It's very small. The whole game basically revolves around this PvP event. It's similar to Ragnarok Online in that the whole game revolves around War of the Imperium. This game, in Nexus, it's Carnages. And basically it's a PvP match with one or more teams selected to combat. From the beginning, it was that you had actual players who would decide the teams. They were called hosts, and they were appointed, and they had to go through training. And basically the training was to learn how to assemble teams that would be balanced, so that every team had a fair chance of winning. So you have to know everybody who's in those teams. So you get a server of 5,000 people, you have to know everybody who's a key player in the PvP scene, and know who they work well with, and how they behave in combat. You have to know what their stats were, because at that time there was no way to see what their stats were, so you had to already know what their stats were. Eventually the GM team started adding features so that we could actually do this. To be able to see what their stats were and be able to make it. They tried doing a thing called auto die, which was basically all the teams were chose based upon their stats. The auto algorithm was never very good, and as far as I know still isn't very good, because it doesn't take into consideration the skill levels of players. There's a lot of characters players, I should say, who have characters that are inferior stats to other characters, but because they're a better PvPer, that person is the top. That person is a leader for that team over the person who has more stats. And the algorithm can't figure that out. So often the algorithm does not make balanced teams. The algorithm just creates teams that should numerically be balanced, but they really aren't because the skill gap is so wide. And then you had, it was so complicated, basically. And that's my background in MMOs. So when you look at the games of today, I love World of Warcraft. I think it's a great, well-designed game for casuals. But for hardcores, it's really not that well-designed. For someone like me, it can't keep my interest long-term because the PvP matches just aren't that good. And then there's major class balance issues that makes the arena stuff, I'm not so into it. But the gist of it is that something like Sword Art Online really speaks to me. And I think that there's others in my generation that understand this. I've never met that many people who fully comprehend what I'm talking about. You basically have had to have been an MMO to have played the certain games that I have played to comprehend what I'm talking about, I think. When I'm around other Nexus DK players, which I have met in real life, when we talk and talk and talk, and it always dawns on me nobody would understand a single thing that we're talking about. When we talk about the deeper mechanics and the politics in the game, because there's a political system within Nexus: The King of the Winds. There's player groups and clans and all that stuff, and there's oh my god, the drama that goes on with that. there's a history to the world, right? There's a history to this world. And when you join it and want to be part of it, you have to know this history basically to thrive within it. And it's just, there's customs and everything. It's just so complex. And, you know, games like Ragnarok Online and on the servers that people are well known. And it's really, I have fond memories of this type of gameplay. I really do. And I think that there is probably a good way to take these virtual worlds and make it something that's going to create a real positive difference in the world. I think that there's a way, and I would like to try to find a way to do that, because I think there's a potential here. I think that there's a potential to turn these virtual game worlds into something bigger than that. And I'd like to do that someday, because I think it'd do a lot of good to put people in touch with each other, you know? I've seen people give away fortunes, in-game fortunes granted, but fortunes nonetheless that took weeks and months to acquire, of just sitting there grinding on something. I see people give these fortunes away for good cause within the game, to support something. You know, I've fought alongside people who are fighting against, you know, PvPers. In most MMOs that I play that have open PvP systems, I end up becoming a PvPer. You know, I kill the PvPers. That's what I do. And I guard people. Like, as an example, there was an event at Nexus where it was a trick-or-treat event, basically. And if you got the trick, one of the tricks could be the quest NPC. You do the quest, and he gives you a trick-or-treat, and it's randomly decided. So you do a trick, and you get sent off in the middle of nowhere in a PvP zone. And there were people that were abusing a bug to resurrect people over and over and over again. So basically what they did was they stood around where the person would be resurrected, and this was a 2D game, so that you couldn't just like walk past people. Everybody who occupies a space at that tile, you can't walk past them. So they would encircle the area where people would be summoned to all together, and they're very high level characters. And they would kill the characters again and again and again, over and over and over. Every time that you died, you lost durability. So they were breaking people's valuable items, like very valuable items in the game, by constantly resurrecting them using the bug. And the GMs were not doing shit. The GMs never did anything about this stuff. Never once did anything about this. It was tragic. So it became upon players like me and others that I was associated with, we spent our entire Halloween night sitting in this zone, fighting the PvPers to prevent them from destroying other characters' stuff. I mean, this stuff is real. This stuff happens. There's a good and an evil within some of these MMO worlds. There really is. There's this divide. You know, and even if it's a virtual world, it's still, I think, very evil to find enjoyment out of the suffering of other people, out of destroying something that somebody else has worked very, very hard to create. I think that's evil. And in MMOs, you find these people. There's some even talked about this in Sword Art Online. You know, there's the PvPer guilds. There's 2 of them encountered by the main character, and this stuff's real. And I think that if Sword Art Online actually occurred, that would definitely happen. There would definitely be people that enjoyed killing people in a virtual world and knowing they died in real life. There's evil people out there, and it's tragic. And you see a lot of it in these virtual worlds. It's a real eye-opener. This ran a little longer than I wanted, but I simply wanted to say that if you're an MMO player, you should definitely check out this series. I really enjoy it. I hope that it continues. I know it's based on a book series, which I would love to see translated English and read it. I hope it continues, because I think it's a really great story. And I think it's very true to the actual experiences and the way that these MMO worlds actually work. You know, although there's some, you know, Hollywoodization, you know, involved, but in the general sense, it's very true to the experience of playing MMO and being deeply involved with that virtual world. Yeah, so thanks guys for watching this video, and hope you have a Merry Christmas.